In 3, 2, 1. Welcome to this published author's interview. My name is Kenneth Muyingo, and with me I have a special guest who I'm going to be having an interview with. And I just want to mention, first of all, if you watch this interview and you would like to write a book and become an author yourself, there is a link with this interview. Click on the link and join the group, become an author and write your first book to connect with like-minded people who are doing the same thing. And with that said, I would like to get into the interview and ask my guest to say hello to you and to introduce herself.
Oh, thank you so much, Kenneth. My name is Namiiro Leah Tamale. I'm a married woman. I'm an author. I do also writing, ghostwriting for people. But away from that, I'm a social worker by passion and profession. So most of the time, my writings have a lot to do with what I see in the field. Away from all that, I'm just an artist, a songwriter, and other stuff. Most of the stuff that I do has a lot to do with words. I can do anything with words.
Wow. A married woman, a teacher, an author, a ghostwriter, a social worker.
A dancer, the list goes on, a Sunday school
artist?
teacher.
Wow, that is quite a profile. Very impressive. I'm inspired by this. And I'm just wondering how you juggle all of these things. But the aspect of your profile that I want us to zero in on this interview is the author aspect. You have published some books, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us about your most recent publication?
My most recent publication is a book that I dedicated to the young people. After I got married, I discovered that I was facing so many challenges, not because I didn't love my husband, but because no one had told me about these things. And I realized that it could also be very hard for people to have a custom-made advice to fit, because we are all dealing with different spouses. So I wrote a book and it's called Do Not Strangle Your Marriage, 48 Ways That Marriage Unconsciously Destroy the Gift of Marriage. So there are certain things that people do and they are not aware that these things are destroying marriage. And in the end, they fall out and they think marriage is very hard. So I wrote this piece as something that people can give their friends when they're getting married, just for them to be more intentional. So that's my latest book. It's called Do Not Strangle Your Marriage.
Do Not Strangle Your Marriage. Wow.
Yes.
That sounds like, I think marriage is one of those things that is very essential, because for example, how I think about it is sometimes we may take 5 years to learn how to drive a car, and we may never drive a car. And then you have this license to drive, but you may never drive a car. And then we find that people are getting into marriage without any form of training. Or
actually, what
just
happens
fall
is,
into it.
There is a lot of research that I did before I wrote Do Not Strangle Your Marriage. And one of the things I realized is people actually get advice, but the problem is it is a lot of misguided notions. It's misinformation. Now, you must understand that you would rather be ignorant and have an open mind to learn than have the wrong information thinking it is the right one.
Wow.
So that's now where the problem is. You think you have the right advice, but you've been guided wrongly by people who do not even understand what's going on in your marriage. So I feel if people could just have the right information, because you grow up in a dysfunctional family and you can only give what you know. The knowledge you don't have cannot help you. So you pass on what you think could probably have worked. You didn't use it, but what you used didn't work. And you're thinking, maybe this could have worked. So you tell it to your daughter. They get married and it's a different story. And they think, I was told to do this. I'll give an example. People are told, women are told, us women, we are told, keep quiet. If your husband does something bad, put water in your mouth. You've heard of that?
Yeah.
So how exactly does a marriage work if all you do is put water in your mouth? How does your husband understand what's going on?
Exactly.
So people put water in their mouth and it doesn't work. So they'll tell their daughter, I put water in my mouth and it didn't work. You know what? When you get into a marriage, be very vocal, fight for your rights. It will still not work.
Wow.
So you recognize that the best way then would be, how can you have health conversation to talk about the problem without focusing on the person that has done the problem? Because usually the person is as much as you. They probably don't even know they're hurting you.
Wow. So what I am understanding is that there is a separation between the person and the problem. And sometimes when there's a problem, we end up attacking the other person instead of addressing the problem.
Exactly.
Wow. I am a married man myself for 5 years and still counting. And I think I need to read this book, Do Not Strangle Your Marriage. It's, tell me.
I've not yet put it on Amazon. I'll probably put it on Amazon by end of June, but I'm done with the physical copy. I'm yet to pick it.
Yeah. So tell us about your vision for this book, Do Not Strangle Your Marriage. Why did you write this book?
Do Not Strangle Your Marriage, I wrote it for the married. But I would rather I tell you about my favorite book. It is not Do Not Strangle Your Marriage. It's a different book.
Yes,
is that
please.
okay?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is okay.
Okay. My favorite book is Self-Gardening.
Self-gardening.
Yes.
Wow.
The concept is something that I coined, and it means if you see this, it's a brain and it's growing and the eyes are enlightened. So this is a concept that I think God gave me, if I should say that way, because I was just there and I thought about it. And the Lord told me, Leah, do you know that every human being is a garden? And all of you are my gardens. And I have made you the custody person. You're the custodian of this garden. So that means there are certain things that I need you to do in this garden, virtue of the authority that I have extended to you. But because some of you are bad bosses to your gardens, you end up doing things the wrong way. So when you sit down, you ask yourself, how come if I'm God's garden, how come I'm not like my Father God? How come I do not reflect God? It's because when the garden was put in your hands, you misused your authority.
Wow.
So that's the idea. How do you nurture the garden that God has given you, that it will produce the right fruit, that you will make sure it is secure, just the way you take care of a normal garden. You're always looking out for it. If you find the leaves are drying out, you're wondering why. You want to find out. You don't want to just ignore and come back when all the branches have been claimed. You need to weed. You need to sow. And you can't just sow in everything. You need to be particular. What would you put in that garden? And even if you had to put fertilizers in that garden, you do not just put any type of fertilizer, right? You have to study the soil. So that means even if you need to read to add to your value, you don't just read anything. So the concept of self-gardening is my very best. I've written 6 books by now, but I think self-gardening would be my best because it answers so many questions. For example, there are certain things that I realize coordinate, even though society may never understand. Let me give you an example. Self-esteem. Do you know that how someone looks at themselves can determine how early they get pregnant with the wrong man? Did you know, Kenneth?
No, I didn't.
So at the end of the day, self-esteem looks a small thing, but the value you attach yourself determines what you're willing to settle for. The value you attach yourself determines how much value do you expect other people to give you. If you think your price is cheap, you don't care when people are misusing your rights. You don't care if people are stepping on you. If you think you deserve better, you fight for better.
Indeed.
So self-gardening, I think, would be my very best.
Self-gardening.
And the vision behind it is to use it as a workbook. I don't want to just sell this book. I want to use it as a workbook in a class. So I wrote it with a concept of training. It makes it hard for someone. I don't know if you can notice, but there are gaps right there.
Yes, I see.
So it makes it hard for someone to move from one chapter to another without the questions arresting them and saying, hey, you're moving to the next chapter, but have you digested what you just read? And I
Indeed.
like
Wow.
that about the book.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Self-gardening. Wow, this is so deep, and the aspect that you mentioned about self-esteem, I think it's it's one of those issues that I think we're not giving the sufficient attention to in our
Yes.
world today. We're so preoccupied with everything else that's happening outside of us and not paying enough attention to who we are. So
Yes.
I'm really inspired by this one, and I would like to get to know more about self-gardening. Tell me, what inspired you? What inspired you to write this book, Self-Gardening?
Like the book says, self-gardening, cultivate yourself into a better you. This is what I believe after doing my social work for the last 16 years in society, specifically the slums. Yeah. You know the slums in Uganda, right?
Yes.
It is where the talent is trapped. Why do I say? Because when you look out for what has come through, it is mainly traced back to the ghetto.
Yeah.
So this is the place that I have interacted with for the last 16 years or so as an active social worker running my own organization, yeah? And I discovered this. We might say our background was very bad. Maybe we weren't parented right. Maybe we didn't have everything that we wanted to have. Our parents were broke, probably. We've grown up in a society where the only good man is the priest. But when you look so deep, even the priest is not upright enough. So,
That's a
amidst all
topic for
that, I
another day.
recognize. I just laughed. I didn't say anything. So, amidst all that, I recognized one thing. At a certain age, you take 100% responsibility and cultivate whatever was not cultivated into you by your teachers. They probably called you all sorts of labels, by your parents, by society that probably best judged you upon racism and stuff like that, and everyone else. Because back there in the slums, some parents even think a child is a burden because they can't feed you and you're right there and you're the reason they have to sometimes even sell their body. These are things happening over there.
Yeah.
So I realized that despite all that, we don't want you to reach your 40 and say, because my mother was a prostitute, this is how things turned out.
Yeah.
No.
Wow.
We want you to recognize when you turn 18 or 16 or 15, whatever the age, when your mind suddenly clicks and wakes up. We want you to say, I take responsibility now. Regardless how I was raised, regardless what I lacked, it is now about me. What can I uproot from my life?
Yeah.
What character can I build into my life? What can I get, for example, from the internet?
Yeah.
Because there is lots of information there.
Indeed.
What can I teach myself? Which kind of friends can I? You realize this is you. Your parents, regardless what they were, they're not going to make friends for you.
Indeed.
No one will determine what you want to get from the internet. If your idea is porn, you're going to watch porn. If the idea is, oh, I'm going to follow Miles Munro, I'm going to check out Kenneth Muyingo, you're going to do that. So at the end of the day, I recognize it is us to garden ourselves. It is us to cultivate stuff into ourselves.
Indeed.
Yes,
Wow.
thank you.
Wow. This is, I mean, I can totally relate with what you're saying. Maybe you didn't know this, but for the most part of my life, I was in Makere Chivulu.
Ooh.
So
you're one of us then.
So for the most part, I was born and raised there. I mean, I left Uganda in 2009, but I can relate with what you are saying, because with the way society is, you see it all around and it's happening that the parents, sometimes you see a home situation and you see a child and a parent and you wonder, who is the adult here? Or and besides all of this, and then when we get older, rather than taking full responsibility for our lives, we start to blame or to point fingers to say, I am the way I am because of my parents, because of this and that. I'm reminded of an old school hymn that says, "It's not my mother or it's not my father, but it's me, oh God, standing in the need of prayer." And at the end of the day, I think it's our responsibility to take charge
Yes.
of our own life and to make it the way that we would like to make it. Very well said. So yes, I do understand what you are talking about, what inspired you, but how did you choose the topic for this book, self-gardening?
Like I said, I do a lot of meditation and reflection. I think it's what backs most of the ideas that I run with. And that was still meditation. This is where I mainly pick the idea from. I'm not trying to be political, but allow me to use the example of Mr. Robert Changulani. I followed the story so much, and it has instances like tying a plaster on your feet so you can lie to people that you have an injury when you actually don't have money to buy shoes. I've followed the idea of making sure you're top in class to go throughout 3 terms, and then you have to change school because you can't afford the tuition. So I look at this person's life, raised by a nurse, through these kinds of situations, and of course the usual happened, drugs, blah, 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 all sorts of things. But then I reach a point where I ask myself, if there is someone else coming from the ghetto and they're telling themselves, I am poor because my parents were poor, what will they say when they look at Bobby Wine? So you see,
exactly.
If you are telling yourself, for example, I used to do very well in school, as always among the first 3, yeah? So I come from a humble background. I don't have everything. So out there is another person saying, I could have done well, but I was always stressed for school fees, but I didn't have enough books. But you see, they start to look like excuses. You could be disabled. You do not have the arms like other people, or you do not have the legs. But you have to remember, there is people like Nick Vuji. You know that guy?
Nick
that
Vuji,
gentleman?
yes. Yes.
So what is your excuse?
Exactly.
You see? At the end of the day, it goes back to, how did this gentleman cultivate himself? The things that he runs his life by were not taught to him by his parents.
Indeed.
It is not how society talked to him.
Indeed.
You see that?
Yeah.
So we cannot say, oh, because they condemn me. The only condemnation that puts you backwards is the condemnation you do to yourself. Because we are living in a society where someone has had an abortion, they have repented, they have become born again, God has forgiven them, but it's going to take them 10 more years to forgive themselves.
To forgive themselves.
I do lots of counseling, and I always quake at these kinds of things that I ask myself, do these people even recognize that the power is within them? Even God is counting on them to use what he has deposited on the inside of them to make things work.
Indeed. Wow.
So it's a light on for me.
This is very powerful. This is very powerful.
I keep stopping myself. I'm a very, very passionate. Very passionate speaker.
I can tell. I can tell, and I'm loving this. Just let it flow. You mentioned that you have written 6 books.
Yes.
And that you are a ghostwriter also.
Yes, when I'm ghostwriting, I'm writing for other people. So usually I say I'm a writer, I'm an author as well, authoring my own work. Indeed. Writing other people's work.
Indeed. But some people struggle with writing. And when I hear you talk about this, it's like for you, you're like a fish in water when it comes to writing. Do you consider yourself as a naturally talented writer, or is writing a skill that you've developed over time?
Like I said, I'm gifted with words. If there is anything to do with words, I am that good about it. Praise the name of the living God and all glory to him. I am that good. If it's anything to do with words. If you need me to talk about a topic, you just have to say, Leah, 10 minutes, you are coming on, and I'll do it excellently. Wow. If you want me to come up with a poem, I'm currently being hired sometimes on workshops just to do poetry out of what has been presented as soon as the speaker finishes like this. And I'm always top-notch on it. So this is the same thing with words that I write. So for me, I think the real gift is in the words that God has given me. And like I said, again, I have a choice. How am I going to use them?
Yeah.
Will I use them to gossip? Will I use them to help people? When you take a look through my timeline, Namiiro Leah, you will see lots of S's.
Yeah.
and I have such a big following through my very long S's.
Yeah.
So for me, I think the real gift that I have is not just the writing.
Yeah.
Because most of the time I have a problem. The words in my head are much more than what I can afford to write. So my hands are too slow for the stuff that I want to write. So like if I had an application where I just have to speak while the words write, I don't know how many books I'll have written. Because most of the time, I design a way that I want to write. I'll probably share it later on in the interview. But I have my own way that I think makes it so easy for me, and I don't mind sharing it.
Very nice.
And it's how I write. I just write in less than 2 months. I'm usually through, and I'm just giving the book to the next professional person, the editor.
Wow. Wow. This is amazing. And I just can't help but I'm curious. Tell us about your writing style.
Well, this is my writing style. I could have charged for it, but there is a scripture that says, freely you were given. Freely you give.
Yeah.
So I didn't study literature. I studied Uganda. Yeah. But God kind of gave me that, I think, because like I said, I do a lot of reflection and meditation. It helps you to scope out what's in your heart. I think the thing that kills the industry of writers is to want to read so many things about a certain topic before they write about it, instead of listening so much from themselves about that topic. So by the time they write, they're actually writing more or less like a compilation from 10 books they've read. And when you're a very good reader, you can tell what was picked from which book. You know what I'm saying?
Indeed.
So this is what I do. If I want to write about a topic, usually it's something that I get a nudge from what I see in society. And then I will first of all write the objectives. Why am I writing this book? For example, when I was writing self-gardening, the first thing I wrote after the title that God gave me, self-gardening, and explaining the garden concept to me was, why am I writing? What do I want the reader to get? You see, you're safer explaining that at the beginning, because as you write, you're more intentional to put it there so the reader can find it there.
Indeed.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So after I ask myself, why am I writing? There should be reasons why. If there are no reasons, then I'm not going to write that project yet.
Yeah.
After that, I will get the topics next. I want to write the chapters from the first one to the last one. Yeah? So I'm going to just ask myself, if I had to write about gardening yourself, and I am looking at the reader getting out this kind of stuff, what would be the subjects that I would address? I'll write them, the chapters.
Yeah.
So when you look at this book, I'm just using this one as the specimen. It is our frog for today. The biology people call it a frog. So this is our frog for today. I'll show you an example. So when I was writing these chapters, I wrote them first. Yeah. So after I write them to the last one, I come back to the first and I will write what I need to fall under it. So when you look at this, when it's finished, you think I wrote one by one. But the problem with writing one by one is that you repeat yourself.
Yep.
You're better off writing the entire picture. So that I have a certain phrase that I usually use, that if you're going to paint a room, you have to first envision how it will be at the end.
Indeed.
Otherwise, you could paint the entire room and fail to paint where you're standing. You've seen a graphical representation of that, I think. You've seen it?
Yeah.
Where this guy is standing in the corner, he has painted everywhere, and he's like, okay.
How do I get out?
How do I paint where I'm standing?
Yeah.
So you have to have the vision of the entire staircase, even if you're going to take the first step.
Indeed.
Where are you heading? Yeah, because you are writing many books. There are things that you're trying to put in the chapter that could make a whole different book. So after I put each subsection, I put the topics, the subtopics under each chapter, and I am sure these are not repeating themselves, then I'll start to write. It becomes very easy. I don't know if you've done dishes before, when they're literally in the sink charted and all they look huge.
Yeah.
When you sort and say the cups here, the plates here, it becomes easy.
Amazing. Wow. Very unique.
So the thing that takes my
Very
biggest
unique.
time when I'm writing is that I have described. That can take me a week.
I see.
I would call it the sharpening of the axe.
Indeed. Indeed. Wow.
And once the week is done, I'm going to cut the tree in about a month or so.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. It's I know that someone will be very grateful that you have shared this. Thank you so much for your generosity, because it's not many people are willing to share such precious information.
Actually, maybe another small one that I could say. One of the main reasons I discover that makes writers hate to write is they start, and 3 chapters into the book, they are stuck. I think people have told you that before. Like, I started off writing. It comes from that.
It even has
because
a name.
you've not broke it down into bits and pieces, and yet writing is about detail, as much detail as you can.
You can. Yeah.
So you've summarized everything in 3 chapters, and then you have nothing to write.
Yeah. It's a real thing. It's called writer's block. Like,
I think the writer's block half the time is man-made.
they start, and then they get to a point and they're like, oh, okay, where do we go?
Because you have to plan the book first.
And then, wow, thank you so much. What would you tell me is the one thing that has happened to you personally that has had the greatest impact on you writing? 6 books, and you are a ghostwriter also. You're writing for other people.
Yeah.
There must be something. And you didn't even study literature, you said.
I studied Uganda.
Wow. So there must be something. Tell me, what is that one thing that has happened in your life that has had the greatest impact on you writing books?
It's a lot of things, because everything I write, even if it's just a sentence, I am emotionally attached to it. That thing has stopped me from even trying to sell my work. Usually I feel I don't want to give it away. So, but one thing that I would say is that grandparent of all these other small fathers and mothers in there is discovering the gift.
The gift.
You know, when you discover your purpose and the gifts that God has given you as adaptations for you to contain that purpose, it becomes very easy for you.
Yeah.
So I discovered that I can write at a very young age, but this is the problem. I always preferred to speak because I am such a spontaneous speaker. I worried so much to write because I felt people will not understand what I'm writing. But then I reached a point and I said, when will I talk to everyone?
Yeah.
Maybe I need to write. Indeed. Some people will not attend the workshops. They will not buy the videos where you're talking. They want to read.
Indeed.
So I ventured into writing 3 years back, writing for myself 3 years back. I had been writing for like 8 years before that. But I ventured into writing my own work mainly because of that understanding that there is someone who will only find your work in a book.
Indeed. Wow.
So when I'm writing, that's the struggle. I feel if I'm talking, it's easier for me to be understood. As a person who writes from meditation and reflection, I do a lot of abstract stuff. Yeah. So if I'm writing, I'm thinking they're going to misunderstand me. They won't get it. They'll think I'm proud. They'll think I'm arrogant. They'll probably not understand this. They'll think I'm guilt-tripping them. So it kind of becomes so hard for me. But then I think about, what about that person who wants to read?
Exactly.
So I think the main thing is you understand your purpose and the fact that this is a gift and God is going to demand for accountability.
This aspect of the gift and purpose has been coming back again and again in the interviews that I have been having. Yesterday, I was having an interview with somebody in the United States of America. He also brought up the issue of the gift and purpose. I was having another interview with another friend of mine in Uganda. He who is also bringing up the issue of the gift and purpose. And I think it is very important, most especially in the times that we are in, that it's going to take us applying the things that we have been given in the form of gift for us to be able to rise above what is happening in the world today. Because if we don't stand for something which is our gift, then we risk falling for anything and everything. So thank you so much for sharing that. Are you currently working on any other projects?
A book?
Yes.
I'm working on 2 books. I'll disclose this one because the client says it's okay to disclose it. We are working on someone's biography. She's called Sarah Shemelere. She's mainly in the field of mental illness. She battled mental illness for 20 years plus, and she has such a heart-gripping but a hand-bending story as well.
Wow.
So we are writing her book, and it's a very eye-opening book. Amazing. Yeah, wait for it. It should be coming this year.
Yeah.
And then I'm working on my own biography. It's called You Decide. It's inspired by the many people that ask me how I do what I do. And I just want to help them understand it's because I decided to do what I do. So I'm writing a story, trying to guide the reader that from a very young age, the decisions have always been presented to me. And it is about me to decide. Indeed. So decisions have shaped me. There are actually some decisions that have shaped me the wrong way, and I disclose them in that book. But there are also good decisions. So it's up to the reader to pick what is good and shun what is wrong. Indeed. So I'm writing You Decide, and I think You Decide should be out in, I intend to write more on it. So I think I just keep writing on it. So I think it should be out like in the next 3 years or so, because it's going to have to wait for my children, for example. I want to write something about my own motherhood. Yeah. So that's why this one is going to take long, because as the stories keep happening, I continue to deposit more into the book.
Indeed.
But away from that, I'm also writing a book on sexual purity. It is called Q&A, Sexual Purity, a Q&A, the Christian perspective.
I see.
So this book is a gathering, a harvest of the knowledge that I have shared to different people in the counseling workshops that I coordinate. I've been doing counseling for the last 15 years, and I've been asked so many questions, especially in the angle of sexual purity, which we know is an ailing patient in the 21st century.
Indeed.
And we need to put that patient on drip and hope that the patient recovers.
Indeed.
So this book is coming out for all the young people, for people that are married, because sexual purity is a wide range. And one would wonder, why am I writing about sexual purity of all things? Because writing has these trends that come. You know, people are now writing about maybe financial intelligence, and everyone wants to write about it and stuff like that. It's a lot like what's happening in the music industry. But the Lord has always made it very clear that my calling should be intertwined with the gift. Because the gift is supposed to be an adaptation for the purpose for which God has called me from a very young age. So I purpose to use my gift to further that purpose, because God called me to the young people. So sexual purity is coming. It's a Q&A. The questions are as raw as people ask them, and I'm answering them. And I know they ask for so many millions of people out there, and these issues are the same regardless which continent you are.
Indeed.
So yeah.
I'm looking forward to this one, sexual purity.
And of course, I have another book coming up. It's a sister to this one. This was my first book. It's called Polished Wisdom. Exceptional key lessons to transform your life. People used to say, you should write about wisdom when you're old with gray hair. I wrote about it already. But I have a sister book coming. It's called Polished Wisdom for the Single and Searching.
Polished
now that
Wisdom
book
for
is
the
overdue.
Single and Searching.
Yes, that book is overdue. I already had it in mind and I even wrote it, but I knew people are going to question because I'm still single. So I waited until I got married. So with
Okay.
my 1 year of marriage, I can finally put out a book.
Yes, indeed. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. This was really wonderful. I really had so much fun doing this, and it's very inspirational. Your story is powerful and very inspiring, and I know that our viewers are going to love this. But if someone watches this interview and they would like to connect with you, first, where can people buy your book, and how can people connect with you?
Some of the books are online now. Polished Wisdom is online. Self-Gardening is online. There is another book. It's a counseling guide for parents to be able to build bonds with their children as they guide them on the things that happen in the world and what their choices should be.
Yeah.
It's called On Your Marks, Get Set. It's behind the concept of the fact that we are in a race. Yeah. So that one is also online. I'm trying to work on putting more books online.
Amazing.
So people can find the work there. Then if they have my contact, which is very easy, because if someone just goes and they put in Namiiro Leah, Namiiroleah, they will send me an inbox and I'll reply instantly, because I have had copies for 4 books so far.
Wow.
Then I also run a page.
So the books are on Amazon, right?
Yes.
Very nice.
The 3 books are on Amazon, then the rest I just have that copy now.
We'll put the link with the interview online so that people can access them. I think it's very, very inspiring. And then you said they can find you on Facebook?
Yes. Then, of course, I also have a page. It's called Color Your Footprints Namiiro Leah. So Color Your Footprints is a bigger concept. It's the current organization that I'm running with. It's a movement that I'm trying to raise. And I think I'm going to do this for a lifetime. And it's with the concept of, I think you're tired of that word.
No. We could do this all day. We could do this all day. You're my kind of person.
Okay, so I keep saying the concept because, like I told you, I always give back to things from an angle of meditation and reflection. Indeed. So that's why I always have a concept behind everything. Indeed. So the concept behind Color Your Footprints is this. I looked around the world and I looked at famous people like Steve Jobs, and I recognized that even having money is not enough for us to live a colorful life. Yeah. So there are people like Steve Jobs that have left behind colorful footprints, but they didn't live a colorful life. Yeah? Because when you look at, for example, the speech that this gentleman gave a few hours to his death, he was regretting a lot of things, and it shocks because the little amount he could give to his employees could sustain them to enjoy a colorful life. So it was surprising that he didn't enjoy, whereas he was in our home having a good time with their families because he could pay them well. You see? So I discovered, okay. So I also looked at another group of people that live a very colorful life, but when they die, they don't leave behind a colorful legacy. Why? Because they are not intentional on living behind a legacy. In self-gardening, it's one of the things I look at. How do you leave a legacy? Intentionally creating a legacy for the next generations after you're gone, because we're gonna go, all of us, right?
Yes.
So this is what I came up with. Color your footprints. Live a colorful life and leave behind a colorful legacy. The idea is that if you were walking and your footprints are colored, we will find it easy to trace your marks after you're gone. But you have to make sure it's intentional. That helps you to make it balanced. That helps you to make it holistic. Yeah. So Color Your Footprints is my current baby, given birth to 3 years back, fully registered, legal, and doing so many workshops around the world.
Amazing. I'm sure going to be connecting with you as far as this is concerned.
Yeah, so people can find me on that page. I'm always posting there, lots of things on Color Your Footprints.
We'll put the link with the interview. And just before we finish the interview, is there anything else that you would like to mention that we have not touched on in the interview?
Okay, it should have been color your footprints, but I just talked about it. So if there is anything more that I want to mention, I think it will be encouraging everyone out there. You have what it takes, but you won't find it if you're looking on the outside. Look within you. Look within you. Look very deep into your story. It could be the worst story ever. It's all right. You've probably seen stories from people like Joyce Meyer, right?
Yes.
So just look within you. That story that you have, those gifts that you have, those skills that you have. Because the world is waiting for the person that has something that people have not yet experienced.
Wow.
So there is something in the inside of you that is very unique, and we can't wait to experience it. And if you take forever to do just that, remember that God is gonna ask, what did you use your life for? And excuses will not make sense.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah. This was very powerful and very inspiring. I'm so glad we were able to do it. I should be keeping in touch.
I can't believe we are finishing. Are there any other questions?